All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Wednesday, February 4th meeting of the Freeport Planning Board. It's just a couple minutes after 6. My pleasure to call the meeting to order. We have a full house tonight, I believe. More than I believe, I know, I can see. We'll dive right in. Item number 1 is, as always, information exchange. Kyle, you want to give us an update on items reviewed by the PRB?
Yep. Just quick before that, Sharon's not here tonight, but she will get the recording afterwards to do the minutes, so she just couldn't make it tonight. Yeah, I had a project review board update, so go over the last 2 months of meetings. Since last month we had that joint workshop and didn't do our info exchange last month. So in December, the PRB approved a approximately 6-acre solar farm on Prout Road. So that had gone to the board a couple times, working through some stormwater management issues back and forth. But that finally got approved at the December meeting. So that should be good. I think it's like a 12-acre roughly developed area, but the actual panels themselves will be on about 6 acres. And then in January, we had the second Depot Street housing project approved in the recent time here. So it was a 45-unit multifamily building across from the other one that was just approved a few months ago. This one, however, unlike the first one, is owner-occupied units. So it's a condo development versus the first one was rental units. So that was great to see. They came for their concept plan and their final approval and went through the process fairly smoothly, so that was great. And they took advantage of the recent height allowance that went through the PB. I think their final height came in at like 52 feet, 9 inches or something, so that was good. That's pretty much it for PRB, big projects over the past couple of months. There haven't been recent text amendments that have gone from PB to council, so nothing there. Yeah, so next would be if there are any comments on the proposed 2026 meeting schedule for the board, if anyone wants any changes to that.
Say it again?
The 2026 meeting schedule for the board. I mean, we've kept with the same, submission deadline and meeting dates, that we typically have, but if there's anything at this time that jumps out to people, we could make adjustments, but otherwise.
I will not be here on the 4th of March.
Okay.
I may be able to call in, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
Other than that, schedule seemed fine.
Yeah, the holiday conflicts seem fairly minimal on this one,
Yeah,
off the top of my head
got
at
off
least.
July 4th got
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So. Okay. Summer's always a busy time, I guess, but.
So that's it for info exchange for me.
All right, item number 2 is a review of the minutes from the December 3rd meeting.
Yeah, so this was actually a mistake on staff's part. There were no minutes from that meeting because we didn't have any public hearings. It's just discussion items.
It was the standards.
Yeah, that was just in there as a placeholder, and I forgot to take it out.
Yep. And I'm just reading off of the page, turning my brain off for a second here.
Okay.
Item number 3 is a public hearing for a zoning text amendment for the VC1 and VC2, or these proposed VC1 and VC2 paid parking prohibition. So we on the board and publicly available as well, there's a draft ordinance and a town manager's memo. We have talked a bit about this. This is a referral from the council, and we've had a good bit of public outreach on this already. But tonight will be hopefully the last step in our part of the process. We'll hold a public hearing to propose, or to discuss rather, proposed text amendments to Chapter 21, Section 104, and Section 514, which is off-street parking and loading, regarding the prohibition of paid off-street parking in the Village Commercial 1 and 2 districts. So, Kyle, do you want to give us any sort of high-level stuff or refresher from the staff report?
Yeah, so just quick background. So we had the moratorium in place. Council met and discussed. It's kind of, that part of it's broken down in the town manager's memo, which was provided. That the council guidance on this topic was to send some more specific guidance than we maybe usually have on policy around this topic based on feedback that they had received. So the guidance was for the planning board to work on and review an ordinance amendment charged with prohibiting charging the public to park in the VC1 and VC2 districts. So based on that guidance, staff drew up a memo that is fairly minimal. Out of the 40 or so pages of the document, there's really just 2 changes. I just kind of left in those whole sections just for context. But the biggest change to the ordinance would come in section 514, which is our off-street parking standards. And that's, where it would call out that off-street parking spaces in the VC1 and VC2, you wouldn't be able to charge a fee to the general public in those spaces. It calls out a couple exceptions to this. If you, well, for one, our leased parking standards, which are, that whole process is in a different ordinance. But basically, that leased parking standards talks about, if someone has a parking lot and they have way more parking than what they need to meet their minimum parking requirement, they can have an agreement with the town, and you can lease those parking spaces out to other businesses or other uses so that they can meet their parking requirements. Like, a lot of lots in our downtown maybe don't have space on their properties to have their own parking, so that's sort of the avenue for them to be able to meet their parking requirement through other people's surplus of parking. So that stays in place. That's not impacted by this prohibition on paid parking. And then the idea of something like an apartment building going in and, putting in their lease that, a tenant is, has one parking space or something as part of their dwelling unit. That's not part of this. This is for the general public, so it's, whether the parking is considered shared or not shared, but it would be parking available to the general public. So for the planning board, the most important thing here is to review this like we would any other ordinance amendments. You're really looking at land use implications and consistency with the comp plan and making a recommendation on that. If there's changes to the language, adjustments, we can talk about that. But the policy guidance is, fairly established at this point. So I'll say that from a comp plan consistency, this is what I tried to focus on in the memo. I think the most kind of related thing between what we're talking about here to what is talked about in the comp plan is that, paid parking as a use and an option is kind of counterintuitive to a lot of what's talked about in the comp plan and the downtown vision about redeveloping surface parking lots into higher and better uses. So there's a lot of talk in the comp plan and the downtown vision about using our downtown surface parking lots for things like housing or new mixed-use buildings, things like that. When you allow things like paid parking, it gives an easier kind of barrier to entry opportunity to leave those surface parking lots as surface parking lots. Because instead of having to go through a complex and expensive development process, someone could come in and just, manage a whole lot as a paid surface parking area, to make some money, but then it remains in that state for the foreseeable future. So I think that's the biggest point to think about when you're thinking of consistency with the comp plan and what this change does. The other part would be that the downtown vision, which is clearly referenced and attached to the comp plan, talks about the town's shared parking model and incentivizing that shared parking model. So Freeport has a long kind of history of its shared parking model and a park once kind of strategy where it's free to the user. And this change is kind of continues on with that tradition and history that the downtown has been using for a while now. So that's pretty much the background. Happy to answer any questions from the board, though.
I have just one language question. That bit about the leased parking,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if your language says what you mean it to say, because if a parking space is leased, could it then be paid? Which I know is not the intent, but I'm not sure.
Is it,
It doesn't apply to the leases of parking.
Right. Yeah.
Which is different than it doesn't include parking spaces leased.
Yeah, it's not,
The
right,
difference
the
in
intent
language.
is, not to have paid parking stations go up on parking spaces.
Yeah,
I understand that, but I don't think your language
we can-
says
it's sort of a similar question in a way of, I wonder if there's a way to define a specific thing that we're trying to prohibit, which, as I understand it, is like hourly or maybe daily parking by the general public. And so I wonder if,
that may be a better way just to prohibit hourly or daily, because monthly leases
That's
you
kind of-
would allow.
that's kind of what I'm wondering is,
And
because-
residential units could have, you pay for the parking space.
right, and there is a bit of a gray area, I think, between what is a parking space that is being used to fulfill a parking requirement and is sort of not necessarily charged as like a separate line item. Like maybe it's included as, part of a tenant's.
Lots of places charge
race.
extra if you want the
Right.
parking space.
Yeah, or
And so
maybe-
you have a fee.
Yeah, and so, but then also do we actually want to prohibit, what if somebody had several parking spots that were leased on a monthly basis? Does that feel different? This is a question, I guess.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
is it like, if somebody had a monthly leased lot, is that different than a daily type of, I don't know.
If I own a parking lot, I'm leasing some of those spaces to this business down the street, but somebody calls up and says, could I just get a monthly permanent space here?
It's not being used to fulfill a parking requirement, it's just I don't know.
Yeah.
But isn't it supposed to be a shared space among all the other businesses?
Well, I think that's the question, is like, there's a sort of leased parking, like, I think what you're getting at in the proposed language, or the staff proposed language, is like, there is a specific type of leased parking that is covered under a separate ordinance. So that's kind of like a specific carve-out, right? Is like spots that are leased under this ordinance and follow these standards that are in this other part of the ordinance.
Yeah, that is talking about like a leased agreement that, someone's got a parking lot, 50 spaces, and they only need 30 of them to satisfy their parking requirement. They have this agreement with the town to put those 20 spaces into this leased pool, and then, business B comes along and needs some parking to meet their minimum parking, and they enter into a agreement with the town to pay for, to use a couple of those spaces.
So is there a way?
So I would say that this talks about, off-street parking spaces where the general public. So if it was a business, like let's say,
The general public.
really like even an apartment with a tenant or like a communal working space that had agreements with people to come in and use the space, and part of the lease was for, there's $50 added on for use of a parking space. I'm not sure that those types of things would fall under the general public.
That's kind of, I
because
guess maybe that's a
that
better way
was
of
sort of
phrasing
the
it.
umbrella that I was
Yeah.
thinking of. Not that it can't be changed, but that's where I was going.
Maybe that's a better way of phrasing my question is the definition of general public well enough understood that it is going to be clear to the end user? And if not, do we need to clarify anything?
Define what general public is.
Yeah.
Today, can a business who has parking spaces near its business, say we're going to now reserve these for certain people who are going to rent it monthly? I mean, can they take away shared spaces and
They can only do that if
that?
they're not using, if they're not,
if it's not required parking?
well,
But they're
yeah, so if they're part of the shared, so like if you're a retail store and you can meet your parking standards in two ways, right? You can either have a lower parking standard by using the shared pool, or you can have a higher standard and have your own parking that is essentially roped off and like signed only for your businesses. The thinking being that most people would want the shared parking because it's a lower requirement, so it's lower cost, so you have to have fewer parking spots. But in either case, can you require that people
Can
pay
you
for
have
that
monthly leases?
Right.
And,
that's
there could be a person who has 50 spaces, they only need 20. They could put 28 of the 30 in the lease and say, I'm keeping these two for this guy over here who wants to pay me on a monthly basis. I don't know if it's okay or not, but
That's still, yeah, but I think the idea is that that's still a lease and it's not available to the quote general public. And the general public, at least in our,
In that
seems like
case,
our
it's
understanding
okay.
is like somebody coming to town for an hour. or
But if the
3 hours.
prohibition, if the prohibition against daily or hourly parking takes effect, and a lot of people are incented to say, okay, now I'm going to designate these spaces for monthly leases, is that a scenario that we might see? Or could we do it, anything in this language that would prevent that?
I feel like it's unlikely.
Probably unlikely.
To be much, yeah.
Didn't all sublet parking spaces have to be run through the town hall?
Yeah, so that's what that chapter 48 leased parking, that's all, it's all managed by the town. So if business A has a surplus of parking.
They can
and
lease to
want
business B if they don't have enough.
Yeah, business A enters an agreement with the town, and then the town administers that out to,
But only if it's shared parking, right?
Only if it's shared parking. Well, no, I think if you had enough, if you had not shared parking and you had extra, you could lease those out.
You could, but it wouldn't have to go through the town, right? The town
I think all leased parking spaces goes through the town.
That's
yeah,
a
under
question.
that chapter 48.
So you couldn't,
have a private lease.
Nope.
I
I
feel
think it
like
has to
we
go
have
through the
somebody
town.
here who knows the answer to that. I'm looking at
and is there a
Caroline.
Private lease, is that a private lease when you rent it to a tenant?
Well, that is a question, isn't it? But all depends on, well, is it?
It's very likely to
Well,
have a
it's actually, is it private because it goes through a public, it's controlled by it's actually sublet through the town. So it's a governmental agency, so is it private? I don't think so.
Caroline, do you know the answer to this? I,
Kind of hide behind Becky, but it didn't work very well.
That doesn't work.
Yeah, I know. If somebody in Freeport has parking in excess of what they need for their parking requirement, they always have the option to enter it into the town shared lease parking pool. So you're right, Andy, if they're gonna lease parking, it does funnel through the town. We have a lot of parking on the face of the earth today that is not meeting a requirement because we already lowered it to free it up for redevelopment. People choose to put it into shared parking for lease, or they choose to not put it in the parking pool. Like Kyle said, I think if you want to get technical on the language here, it has specific reference to Chapter 48, our traffic and parking ordinance, which for some reason, when they set this whole thing up back in the day, they put the land use requirements and references to the shared parking and zoning, but the leased parking is specifically called out and how to participate in it in the traffic and parking ordinance. I don't have concerns about the way it's written. I think it's clear, and I will say leases can vary. We'll see them for years, we can see them for months. If someone's doing something and displacing it for short term, they could come in and need to lease a little bit. Do I think by these changes, we're gonna see all these people come in tomorrow and put spaces in the pool? No, because right now the demand's not there, which has been a whole part of this conversation. Did that answer your questions?
mostly.
Are
I think I'm
private
still.
leases allowed?
Yeah.
Or
No,
could you-
all the leasing to meet parking requirements comes through the town of.
But if,
But what if it's not to meet parking requirements? I have extra parking spaces and I wish to enter into a private lease. Do I have to do it through you?
If you're leasing them to meet a parking requirement, you would.
but if not, so if there's an
No,
excess.
I wouldn't know,
Yeah.
because they don't.
But I wouldn't say that, so if it's,
I'm not aware
I
of
wouldn't
any.
think that that's the general public. By any, normal definition of what the general public is, I wouldn't think that
Okay.
would
So,
count.
I mean, do you think if you added daily or hourly in here, it would make it all the clearer?
I feel like then it just gets more technical and another,
Is general public well
Complicates
enough
it.
understood?
I think the general public, or I think you could say.
So I would say the staff didn't have any
Okay.
problems with
Okay.
it, but if we wanted to add clarification, we
Just
can.
imagining the person who's,
And we read it through code enforcement
Yeah.
and our development director, so it's been through a lot of
and let it go.
eyes.
All right, I'm happy.
I have one small language
Yep.
change proposal on B, where we have the prohibition on 4B. What you have here is off-street parking spaces where the general public is charged a fee.
Yep.
I think it'd be a little cleaner just to say it shall be prohibited to charge a fee to the general public to park a motor vehicle in the Village Commercial 1 and Village Commercial 2 districts. Because it starts out sounding like it's happening, like off-street parking where the general public is charged
Yeah.
a fee.
Yep.
I had that thought too. And then I convinced myself that there was a reason it was written this way, but I generally agree that it would be clearer. Yeah.
You got that? You have that, Kyle?
Yeah, can you do it one more time? So it shall be prohibited
It shall be
to,
prohibited to charge the general public a fee in order to park a motor vehicle in the Village Commercial 1 and Village Commercial 2 districts.
In off-street
Yeah.
parking spaces
Right,
in the.
Yeah, I missed that part, right, right.
All right.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Do I hear a motion to open the public hearing?
Yes, motion.
Second?
All right, all in favor? All right, public hearing is now open. Any members of the public who are present, either physically present or on Zoom, who would like to comment, please either make your way to the podium where the microphone is in a good location, you don't need to change where it is, or you can raise your virtual hand. In either case, please say your name and let us know what you're thinking. Don't be shy.
You have to go to the just so that it's captured.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Wise. I'm a director at LLB, and you've seen me before. It's good to see you all again. I have a couple comments, but first I just want to make a clarification. As you all know, LLB's stance is that we are against paid parking in downtown Freeport. I want to make sure that I like the conversation you guys were having, but like extra land, so even if it was outside of parking, just if somebody had a parcel of land that wasn't in the shared parking or just purely hadn't been used, that paid parking would still be prohibited on that land in the downtown district. I just want to make that clarification. I think that's
Talking about undeveloped land.
undeveloped land
clear.
Yeah.
or excess land that is currently parking that's not part of the shared model. So I think that's the piece I was a little unclear about in the ordinance.
yeah, it applies to shared and not shared.
It does,
So it'd be
okay.
anything that's deemed a parking space
Got
would
it.
fall under this.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for
Or
that clarification.
created to be a parking
Yeah.
space.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's all.
Any other public comment? Do we have anyone? We have a few. I see something on Zoom, maybe? No hands, but people?
No, I mean, that's mostly Tom. There's one person, but no hands.
Okay. Well, we did have a good public process on this before, so maybe everybody feels like we're fairly settled. All right, do I hear a motion to close?
We closed the public hearing. Second?
A second, all in favor? All right, public hearing is now closed. Somebody want to take a crack at a motion to recommend the proposed changes to the town council for their consideration and hopefully their adoption?
It's not going to be me on this one.
So there are the two bullet points that at least staff recommended, to think about in terms of consistency with the comp plan are above the proposed recommendation. So you can use those or something else. I did use staff context in there, so if you were going to read off a motion, you do not have to read the staff context into the record.
And maybe ahead of a motion, since I know last time, I think we had only 6 people present and we split the vote. Is there any use for a straw vote here or any, I mean, do people feel generally like the policy direction fits with the comp plan and we're okay to, does anybody have, I mean, I'm fine with opposition, obviously. Like, opposition is understood and great, but I feel like if there are sort of questions that might be able to be resolved or people have firm stances one side or another and we're heading toward like a split again, I guess
Well,
rather know.
as the instigator of the split, I'd just say.
Well, it took,
it's
you know,
about
it
that.
took 3 to tango on
Yeah.
all sides of that, I guess, right? Like, you know, it wasn't just you, Mitch.
Really?
I mean, I believe in private property rights, but I also believe the town council has a right to ask us to make changes, and it's ultimately up to them, so I defer to the council, and I also defer to the public. And we've heard from the public very dramatically and consistently that they're against it. So it is under, you know, it's not my favorite rule that we've made, but I understand why, and I will vote in favor of it.
All right, cool. Yeah, and it's not, I mean, none of this stuff is in perpetuity either, right? Like, if we find in 5 years that some market change or for some reason it makes sense to revisit this, then we can always do that, so, or some future board can always do that, so. All right. Anyone want
The
to?
other negative votes want to make comment?
Yeah, I'm not trying to put people on the
Yeah,
spot,
no,
again,
I
I
mean,
just
just-
wanted to try to,
it's-
yeah.
An interesting issue. What?
Each side of you
Yeah.
or your negatives.
The only thing is, one of the main things was the Historical Society had an issue. So has that
Yeah,
been addressed?
I think
As something?
the short answer is probably no. That I think
Okay.
in some ways this is a hardship for certain landowners and certain types of organizations in town. And so, you know, I don't want to spin it into like some celebration of that hardship. I think the change has sound reasoning behind it, and I believe that it's a good change to support the other the other goals and policy goals and sort of vision goals that we've laid out in the comp plan and the downtown vision. But that doesn't ease the hardship for individual businesses. So I hope, or individual organizations. So I hope that there can be some discussion, whether it's here or whether it's other
Yes.
places. You know, I think,
So in the town manager's memo,
Right.
it calls out a little bit, you know, the council also intends to explore complementary strategies such as partnerships or cost-sharing frameworks to
Yeah, I
help
read that.
offset maintenance costs.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be ongoing conversations around how to relieve some of that burden in those sorts of cases. So,
so it's a first this, and then more of that. So, right, I mean, yeah, if it were easy every time, then, you know, probably wouldn't need a board at all, so. Still need a motion, though. Wayne, you want to take a crack at it?
Sure. Be it ordered that the Freeport Planning Board recommend to the Town Council that the proposed text amendment to Chapter 21 zoning ordinance, Section 104, under definitions, and Section 514, off-street parking and loading, to prohibit paid off-street parking in the Village Commercial 1 and Village Commercial 2 districts is consistent with the Town of Freeport Comprehensive Plan.
sorry, Wayne, real quick. Do you want to add in with the edit you mentioned?
Oh, sorry, yeah. Let me get back to what page, where is that again?
I don't think, you don't need to necessarily read the
Just say
language
no, edit it
in.
at the
Yeah, I'll go back in the minutes to capture it exactly.
Yeah, and the prohibition shall be amended in accordance with the language discussed at the planning board meeting on February 4th, 2026.
All right, I think we do we need a way in which it's consistent with the comp plan?
I don't think you necessarily have to read in the language. I mean, if you find it consistent, and we talked about those 2 points being the reason on record in the public hearing, I think that's
Okay.
fine.
Okay.
Unless anyone is opposed to either of those reasons, being a basis for it.
I certainly find it reasonable. All right, so do we have a second?
Second?
Excellent. All in favor? I should put my glasses on. I think that's unanimous, right? Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. Great. All right, thanks for,
Thought about
Continue
dying on the
working.
hill, but decided not to.
I've been there, I've done that. Okay, item number 4 is a discussion, an ongoing discussion for zoning text amendments to the C1 and C3 districts. As everyone knows, we've been talking about this for a little while now, but tonight we actually have some, kind of a first crack, right, Kyle, at some draft language to react to, which I find is always a good step to have something to react to and see kind of where the rubber meets the road or starts to meet the road on some of these things. So, Kyle, you want to
Yeah.
go over anything as we start to look at this?
Yeah, so, right, I mean, this is supposed to be meant as a jumping off point, a discussion starter for people to react to, not tied down to anything here. It's all open for discussion. So, but it should be easier to digest this than going through endless, PowerPoint presentations and trying to react off of. So I'll highlight, some of the key things that we discussed previously that trying to implement into here. So right off the bat, the first biggest thing is, when you're looking at the C1 and the list of uses, you have this section of uses under site plan that are only allowed on the east side of Route 1, 300 feet or more beyond Route 1. Or, there's a way to potentially do it closer, but you have to meet some really intense screening standard. So right there, that's sort of a barrier to developing on any of the lots that might not have the space to set back 300 feet off of Route 1, and it completely eliminates any of those developments from happening on the west side. So multifamily housing was moved from that section to and affordable housing developments as they're kind of an extension of multifamily housing. Under the normal list of allowable uses, as long as you go through the site plan review process. So that would be similar to how those two uses are handled in every other zoning district where they're allowed. So that's sort of the baseline, just putting the use on the table as a more realistic option. So then, in both the C1 and C3, we looked at minimum lot size. So minimum lot size requirements, so this is just the amount of land you need to create a legal lot. We're not really talking about density with minimum lot area. So in both cases, C1 and C3, I dropped it down to 5,000 square feet. Now, if I was just writing this draft on my own, that's probably not the number I would have necessarily lowered it to, because a 5,000 square foot minimum lot size is probably something more typical to a downtown area or like a denser single family neighborhood maybe. But that's based off of LD 1829 and what's coming with our need to comply with the state law there. Jumping to minimum land area per dwelling unit, now getting into the density conversation, right? We talked about this previous meetings. Both districts have incredibly low density allowances, right? So the C3, you need 7,000 square feet of land per dwelling unit, which is 6 units an acre. And then in the C1, at most you can get to 3 or 4 if it's but only if you're part of a mixed-use development, not purely a residential development. So pretty low. So in both cases with this, what I did is, I went to the dog bone work group report, which talked a lot about density per acre for a lot of the zoning districts from downtown south along Route 1. And the recommended range in there for these two districts was somewhere in the ballpark of 20 to 28 units an acre. But there was also some conversation in the dog bone about, well, could we extend the idea of like a 0 land per dwelling and just going off of more of a form thing in some surrounding areas? Didn't necessarily state which ones, right now we only do that in the VC1, so 0 land per dwelling under the dog bone could be a recommendation in the VC3, which is between the C3 and the VC1, just north of LLB and headquarters, whereas the C3 really starts south of that. So C3, just for context for anyone listening, is basically from LLB and headquarters down to Main Beer, and then C1 starts and goes south of that down to the town line. On the west side, Shaw's falls in the C1 and is sort of the northernmost C1 parcel. But so for density, what I landed on just as a starting point and try to balance is, again, part of this is based on our need to comply with the state law. So in the C1, it would be, you'd need 1,250 square feet for the first 4 dwelling units. That's part of the state requirement. And then 1,750 square feet for each dwelling unit beyond the first 4. And that ends up being 26 units an acre. So right in that 20 to 28 range, that was in the dog bone. So when you think of some of the recent downtown apartment projects that happened, one was 51 units, one was 45. Those were both on parcels just under an acre. So this is roughly like half that density. Then in the C3, as you're going up north a little bit, the speed limit drops a little bit, and you're starting to get closer to downtown. It's more of a transition area. You're in that gateway growth area now, not the Route 1 South growth area. The density increases a little bit, and I just carried the 1,250 per unit across the board, which equates to 34 units an acre. Then in both cases, in both districts, raised the building height to 45 feet. Previously, the C3 was a hard stop at 35, whereas the C1 was a base of 35, and it had some options to potentially get up to 45, again, with, I think, some screening requirements being met. In both cases, raised the impervious surface to lot area from 70% to 80%, which is more in line with other zoning districts in our growth area.
With really small lots, it gives a lot more, it's 70% of 5,000 feet.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to do much. Well, and, we can talk a little bit about how feasible a 5,000 square foot lot actually is with some of the other stuff here. It's important to remember that in both these districts, single-family homes are already in allowed use. Duplexes are already in allowed use. So you could have someone do a small lot subdivision on an undeveloped parcel in one of these districts in a more residential style and take advantage of the 5,000 square foot lots. But if you're talking about larger commercial use or multifamily building or something, it's unlikely they're going to want a 5,000 square foot lot. They're going to
5,000 square feet is really small. Like my lot is 10,000 square feet, and we are non-conforming on just about every setback, and we're in the V1, which is even small. So it's like that's a small lot.
Yeah.
It's crazy small.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous in a town like Freeport.
Yeah.
And
So-
I'll just repeat my comment that I'm amazed that the town council has not complained to the state about the taking of our rights. That said, I don't think it's necessarily going to hurt these areas, but it's crazy.
Yeah, I don't think it, so.
Out of line.
It kind of leads into the next thing, so which is a frontage requirement, right? So because
We still have a right to impose,
yeah,
right?
part of the state law doesn't touch, what we could, or any town do for frontage requirements. So you'll see that in the proposed draft, they've been reduced somewhat, but still in certain cases fairly high. So right now, the minimum road frontage you need to create a legal lot in the C3 is 300 feet on Route 1 or Pine Street and 150 on other streets. So I reduced that down to 150 on Route 1 and Pine Street and 50 on other streets, knowing that, we'll get to it later, that there's a lot of other things promoting, like reducing curb cuts and sharing access between lots. But knowing that, if there are going to be some smaller lots, a 300-foot, even 100 feet of road frontage is going to make having a 5,000 square foot lot really
Yeah, it's basically
difficult to do.
impossible, right?
5,000, it's 50 by 100, that's what
Right.
it is.
Yep.
It's a 50-foot lot.
Yeah. So 100 is, 50 or 100 is probably, what you would.
If you have a side setback of 15 feet on a 50-foot lot,
You might want to finish your thing first,
Yep.
but single-family attached
Yep.
is a problem already. What if you have 20-foot attached homes with driveways? Are we
Yeah.
not allowed to do that?
Well, so what you'd be looking at to do, like a townhome style, like where, attached, would be like a condoized situation where you have one lot, so you're meeting setbacks on the larger overall parcel. But, so you might have a 20-acre parcel and
But
have.
you could
a
not
bunch
do
of-
fee simple townhomes. You could only do them as a condo.
Yeah, that's currently how the ordinance would be, too, yeah.
right, that would require quite a change, wouldn't it, to have?
The land.
You have to
Except
have
25-foot
zero-
lots, yeah.
Yeah, but you have to have 0 setbacks and 0.
Yeah.
Yeah, there would have to be a special provision for, like,
Some
even
sort of
under our
setback.
current ordinance, that wouldn't be allowed.
It would require,
But yeah,
Once you condoized it, then you could do what you want on your private street.
right. Yeah, you could have, yeah.
yeah, because it can all be treated as one lot, so now you're only meeting setbacks and frontage requirements for the one larger parcel.
The land goes into condo
And,
association, common ownership.
yeah, and the density is really all that you're worried about, which is how most of the townhome and multifamily, multiple multifamily building developments around town are laid out. But yeah, so the road frontage, setback requirements, right, they're going to make having a 5,000 square foot lot size difficult. So, that's something we can talk about. I went with a kind of initial strategy of reducing somewhat, but not completely getting away from the kind of, longstanding, existing conditions.
But you did go to 50 off, right?
Yeah.
So if you
yeah,
really did
so-
do 50 by 100 lots, which is a relatively standard size for a small lot, patio home style, you could do that with everybody having a driveway.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so that was sort of acknowledging that if you're not on one of the main corridors through the C3, that if someone, there's an undeveloped lot and someone wants to build a new road off of Route 1, and then do a smaller lot, residential neighborhood or mixed-use neighborhood, some single-family, two-family, multifamily mix with, some small-scale commercial units, they could achieve those small lots. But you're probably not going to see the 5,000 square foot lot fronting on Route 1
You
in the
shouldn't,
C3. Right.
But on the side street or
Yeah.
potentially a new side street.
Yeah.
And you could have simple ownership on 50-foot lots, but you couldn't on 40-foot lots.
Yeah.
If you wanted to do 40-foot, which is again a standard for a small lot, detached, you could only do that under a condo.
Under this draft.
Yeah, under this current
I
draft,
guess it's
it could be
okay.
changed, but
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I went with the 50, basically thinking about the 50 by 100 and
Yeah.
5,000 square foot lot. In the C1, it's a little different. We have this, and the C1, you'll see that there's a whole page there after the uses sort of crossed out. because there were a lot of standards sort of jumbled together in there and mixed together. So you had lot area, frontage, and density all mixed together. You had different standards depending if you're on the west side or the east side. So tried to clean that up a little bit. But basically, the intent of the existing language was to say that, previously existing lots or lots that share an access point, you're trying to incentivize that. Not adding a lot of new access points on Route 1. So if you do those things, if you're not on Route 1 or you're sharing an access point on Route 1, a shared driveway, or you're coming off someone's existing parking area, and you have an easement, things like that, there is no road frontage requirement. So that's where the current standard, I tried to keep that going forward and just clean up that language. But then if you don't meet those kind of criteria, and you are just creating a new lot in the C1, and you want to add a curb cut, well, then you have this 300 feet of road frontage requirement, which is, again, what the existing ordinance is, so it's just carrying that forward.
Before we get off curb cuts, can you tell me about grandfathered curb cuts?
Yeah, so that's if you're a lot of record and you're existing and, you're good. You could just keep that lower frontage requirement.
So I can use my two curb cuts because they're existing.
Um,
Tell me how that works.
Are they both coming off of Route 1?
Yep.
That's an interesting question of,
Yeah, I'd probably have to add that into the, so the existing language, so I mean, you'd be grandfathered in to, there would be no way for the town to go in and say you
They've
can't
tried.
have that. Well, I mean, with a grandfathered use though, I mean, there's.
I stood in the audience one night and fought with Donna Larson. I have 4 existing curb cuts, 2 on each side of the road, and she said they didn't exist. And I had my DOT map, and she said, I don't want to see it. So,
Yeah.
it's a concern for me.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can add some language in there. So there was something previously in there that
There's other
said.
people up and down the road that have more than one existing.
Yeah.
so how are they,
They've been there since the highway went through.
how are they documented? On a DOT map, or does the
Yep,
town?
DOT map, because they gave us curb cuts and they put in culverts.
Yeah, so then it feels like that would be the sort of thing that would be referenced in, or so like curb cuts existing on DOT map dated, whatever,
1947,
sure, yeah.
actually 1957, excuse me, 1957, when they put the road through.
That would be,
Why not just add some grandfather language for curb
Yeah.
cuts?
Because, as I walk up and down the road, there's 2 or 3 old pieces of land still left that have a couple of these, 2 curb cuts, because they have big, long lots.
Yeah. Yeah, we can add it back. I think I left it out because it's in the existing language part that's struck through. So it says, you have 0 frontage if,
Lead us there.
so this is on page 3. It's towards the top of the part that's crossed out, right? So it's a little hard to read since it's struck through, but basically it says, you get the lower road frontage requirement if there's no more than 1 access point, existing or proposed on a lot of record, you share your access, or if you have 1 existing access point per, or more than 1 access point per lot of record, before 2008, then a few different things trigger at that point. It says the board may ask you to relocate. You can't have more than what was existing as of 2008, or the board may limit access points to a number less than the number existing if the PRB determines that the maintenance of the number of access points existing is likely to, create any number of. So this is what I was trying to get rid of because it kind of just runs on and is complicated. So I think we can probably just add a simpler
tags.
grandfathering of 2 curb cuts.
Just
for-
existing grandfathered curb cuts.
Yeah.
save
Right.
the ink if nothing else, I mean, geez.
Yeah, just grandfathered curb
Yep.
cuts.
So we'll just add a number 4 there under 2A on page 4.
Since you're getting so specific, I just want to make one point you might want to put in there, because if you change the use, you need to apply for a change of use for a driveway. And there could be different requirements for that, so you might just want to incorporate that into your language. Like if you're there and you keep your single family, you can keep it, but if you change your use, it might need to be looked at.
Yeah.
So that's a key point to the wording. Like you haven't changed your use, so you haven't
Oh, and I
had
have
to
permitted uses.
change it. Yeah, but somebody else, if you just
So if
put a
it's like-
date in there, it could be,
So
Bad.
if there's a curb cut that's in a sort of, that's like very close to another curb cut, and the change of use is now we want to do like a big truck.
and it's no longer
turnaround.
safe, yeah.
Yeah, and it's no longer safe, then there's a provision that says, well, that curb cut may exist and it may be legal, but if you try to change it into something that's going to be unsafe, then.
Yes, the whole thing with nonconformity, like they're fine if you don't change, but at the second you change it, you could have to bring someone into compliance, and so I just don't want that to get lost in your conversation.
Yeah, I mean, that's, right, so that's what the previous language was trying to get at, right? It was trying to give the town the option of saying, well, it could be fine, and just carry on with your 2 curb cuts that you've always had for, 50 years or whatever. Or, if it's a, development project and it's at the PRB, and you're already redeveloping the parcel, and there's a way to do it with one, or, one off Route 1 and another one coming off another road or something like that. It was trying to give some flexibility to take into account some of those
Well, the
concerns.
problem is some of the lots are long.
Yep,
When you got 1,400 feet of road frontage, and you got a couple of curb cuts, it's reasonable to be able to use the ones you have,
yep,
so,
yep,
Is access point synonymous with curb cut?
yeah.
yeah, essentially, yeah. I mean, you could have, when we start talking later on about cross-access between lots, you could say the access point onto one lot is through the parking extension on the abutting lot or something like that. But generally, when we're talking about driveways and curb cuts, that's the access point onto the lot. All right, so we'll come back to that a little bit because there's some more on access management in the 527 section. So then the other kind of key change, and one of the things that would set apart the C1 from the C3, aside from a little lower density, in our current comp plan, our new one, the Route 1 South growth area talks about increasing housing opportunities, but it specifically talks about that Route 1 South growth area not being an extension of the downtown, right? And it allowing things like townhomes and smaller multifamily uses, not necessarily the larger apartment buildings that we might see as you go north up towards downtown. So I added a provision in the C1 that talks about maximum building footprint for multifamily dwellings, where you would have a maximum of a 5,000 square foot building footprint for any multifamily structure. Now, you could have multiple multifamily buildings still. So like a single family attached would technically still be multifamily because it's, more than one or more than 3 dwelling units attached in a single structure. But so that 5,000 square foot max building footprint would still allow for things like townhomes. It would still allow for some smaller apartment buildings. I think the recent one on Depot Street that was just approved had like a 7,500 square foot footprint, and that was a 45 unit building. So, you could still, with a 5,000 square foot footprint, potentially going up, 3 or 4 floors, you could still have a decent number of units per building, but it would break it up so to prevent the idea of, just a wall of large apartment buildings going down that whole stretch of C1. But again, conversation to be had there if people want to see anything different. But those are sort of the big changes dimensionally to the space and bulk standards across the 2 districts. See if there's anything in the standards for those districts. I did delete in the C1, there was a special standard that said, building heights are allowed up to 45 feet only if they can be adequately screened. Since this is proposing to just raise the building height, that language wouldn't really be needed if that was the case. There was a kind of a redundant, I think, standard, just talking about if you're in the shoreland zone, you have to meet the shoreland zoning ordinance. We already,
There is no shoreland in C1 or C3.
But also, it's pretty darn clear.
There is.
there might be a little,
Where?
Freeport Cafe.
Oh, right there, right there. Uh-huh.
But also,
but that's one of those things that
everybody knows if you're in the shoreline zone, you gotta meet
Yeah,
the
yeah,
shoreline
sort of.
zoning, like,
Yeah,
that's.
it's already there.
it's, yeah, it's probably not useful to. And then in the C3, there was a specific performance there in the C3 that talked about limiting curb cuts on Route 1 and Pine Street where possible to one per lot. So as with the access stuff in 527, what I tried to do was based on, like the conversation we had through design review, was trying to like beef up some of these standards where it talks about, you should do something, or it's encouraged or preferred, and giving it more teeth to say, kind of the default is that you're going to do this. You're going to at least make an effort to have only one curb cut. And then
Burden of proof kind of shifts.
yeah, and then on the backside, give the board or the reviewing authority the ability to put in some flexibility if the applicant can show for good cause that there's a reason to not do that.
And there again, grandfather will apply, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought that was brilliant, and where they are practical. I thought that was a perfect
Right.
way to do it.
All right. So that pretty much covers C1 and C3 changes. Then, in the 527, tried to take out some of the purpose, non-standard based kind of intent language at the beginning, just to shorten that a little bit and condense it.
Why the lighting?
Why the what?
Why minimize sky glow from lighting?
So I took that out simply because there aren't any lighting
Okay.
standards. If we were
Oh.
going to add special lighting standards for in 527, then I would say, great, leave that in.
Okay,
Um,
but there are none.
But yeah, there really aren't. I mean, there's I think a mention in the signage part, which I'm recommending
Right.
removing and putting in the
Right.
sign ordinance,
Yep.
that talks about lighting on signs, not creating sky glow.
Right.
So with that being really the only mention of lighting, didn't
Okay.
feel super necessary. We have a section already for exterior lighting.
Oh.
If we're going to change our lighting standards to encourage more, dark sky compliance or, things like that,
Right.
that's a fine conversation to have, but,
Right.
maybe we want that townwide, or, we can call out specific zoning districts where certain things apply in our lighting section, just like with the signage. We already have a sign ordinance. It makes more sense to probably condense that into one place, so people
Right.
aren't looking for standards on the same topic in a multitude of places. So yeah, those sign standards, like we talked about previously, would be removed, and then, we could create an aside kind of memo to, ordinance committee or council or whatever it might be, that, maybe that should be looked at as they're redoing the sign ordinance to be added into that conversation. Building design, this is sort of like a abridged miniature design review for the corridor that's not quite as intensive, but has some general design standards. I made a couple changes here, but not really much substantively. But if people have ideas for ways to improve this section, it'd be all ears. The biggest changes were to that access, and then I added a parking provision in there as well. So again, we had the standard for, new access points in Route 1 shall not be closer than 300 feet to an existing access point. So, and then there was already some language about sharing of common driveways is encouraged. Where possible, access from a side street or driveway is preferable. So number 1 and 2,
Where practical, right?
yeah, and, right, the existing access point being 300 feet or more, yeah, where practicable, or to the greatest extent possible. All of this language is really hard to enforce at the PRB level. And if you're just saying it's preferred, you're not putting any burden of proof on the applicant. So it's perfectly possible that people just ignore it and, propose their new curb cut and move on. And, I mean, if that's what the general policy direction was, that's fine. We can talk about that. We can leave the language the same. We can make it softer. But if the intent is really to, improve access along that corridor and limit potential conflict points of people, multiple curb cuts of people entering and exiting Route 1, then it would make sense to strengthen that language a little bit. So the number 1 and 2 really put the burden on the applicant to make an effort to explore options like sharing driveways, cross-access easements with abutting driveways and parking lots, or using side streets to access their lot versus, access just on Route 1. So for some of the bigger, undeveloped parcels, creating a private street and then having driveways off of that or something.
Can I have a nice question before you go too far?
Yeah.
Says a minimum of the first 50 feet of any driveway off Route 1 shall be paved. Is that just for things that go through site plan review, or is that for all? Is that for permitted uses, or just uses that are the site plan review?
So at the top of 527, kind of at the purpose section, it says the following performance standards are applicable for any development that requires site plan review.
Okay.
Before it said, for project review board, but I just changed that
So
for,
any of the permitted uses are exempt from that?
yeah, single-family duplexes wouldn't
Yep,
wouldn't
okay.
be required.
Just checking.
Yep. And then the last thing I added to that section was kind of what we talked about previously as well in one of the presentations. We didn't necessarily, as we talked previously, want to go so far, I think, the board in the direction of, making it, seeing as it's not currently or for the foreseeable future won't be a walkable, bikeable, downtown village center type environment. Allowing some parking out front is fine. That's kind of the existing condition. A lot of uses have a couple rows of parking, but primarily it's to the side and rear. So that's sort of what we would carry forward when reviewing new projects, is that the bulk of your parking might be to the side and rear, but there's this provision that limits you to 2 rows of off-street parking with one, a travel aisle in between, in front of your building, between the building and the setback. And then, so moving on to pedestrian access. This was another thing we talked about a little bit, but never really landed on a solid answer. So we have that existing provision that talks about creating that pathway when projects go to the PRB for development projects, connecting into other developed parcels nearby, but then if they're undeveloped, you don't really have to do anything. And the PRB can actually just waive the requirement as well if they, don't feel like there's a reasonable access to be had. So we talked about a couple of things when we were talking about this before. So I think this is the one standard that I'm not fully comfortable with the language at all. I just put it in here more as a placeholder. But something to the effect of, the PRB looking at requiring a pedestrian connection between lots only if there was some adopted town plan that called for a specific trail or sidewalk. So if the town had a mixed-use trail and it was documented in an approved plan, then when lots came forward, a developer could contribute a certain part of that. But there are other options here too. We talked about, like more of an impact fee type approach, or, we could just still require that connection that's required right now, but strengthen it to include more strict standards. So on that one, I'm still totally open and would want a lot of feedback on that from the board.
Well, why not a right-of-way situation there? Make it a condition that they have to leave a right-of-way along Route 1 for that path for future development potential.
Yep.
Yeah, it's hard to know where to put it.
Yeah, I think So I'll talk to the Public Works Director about that, like how much existing room is in the right-of-way for sidewalk already, if the town got to the point that we were ready to introduce like sidewalks along that whole stretch. Would we need expanded right-of-way?
There's plenty of room in the right of way down there.
Yeah, so,
You just have to fill in the ditch and do
Yeah.
special drainage.
yeah,
So when will we be providing feedback on that issue?
provided right now.
Okay. I mean, we've discussed it before, and I was in the minority, I believe, and
Yep.
I believe that there should be incremental progress, and wherever possible, there should be, you know, a route planned or left for pedestrian or bicycle access, because you could almost do it now for pretty long distances along Route 1. It's just, you know, you come across various obstacles that don't need to be there, and if we could eliminate some of those, you'd have a nice pathway away from the road, which would be a lot safer for bikes and pedestrians.
So,
Well, so one thing that is a little different now is in the other access standards, now that we've put a kind of stricter burden, say, on looking at cross-access between lots, and the next standard down here is providing pedestrian walkways through parking lots. So if there's a situation where an undeveloped parcel is next to a developed lot, and, you know, they do connect into an existing parking lot, you know, there would be an obligation to create some pedestrian walkway connecting between the two lots. But yeah, it doesn't go as far as like a whole stretch of, you know, walkable area.
Just take an example, Maine Beer is doing all this construction in the back. Is there any reason why we shouldn't be requiring them to provide a trail there that connects to Route 1 South?
on Pine
For their,
No, on Route 1.
I mean, like say that you
For the
could get
parking
from their new
expansion?
parking
Oh, they're
area
about to
back
put a
out
parking lot
to-
in the front,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I bet they'd do it if you asked nicely.
Well, so, thi-
But I think it's,
Yeah, but
the-
what-
so I will say that they do have a pedestrian, I think, access between the parking lot and Maine Beer, which is essentially what the current standard is asking for. You know, you would be connecting from one parcel to the next, not necessarily from your developed area, like your building front door, to the right-of-way on Route 1.
Well, what I'm thinking of is going from, from Maine Beer down toward Royal River, which you could almost walk entirely in parking lots, except for a few obstacles, and Maine Beer is one of those obstacles.
There's a sidewalk right to Maine Beer.
right,
There's a
but not
sidewalk
beyond
in
it.
front of it.
Yeah, sidewalk
Yeah,
right to
but as
Maine
you
Beer.
go- As you go south toward Royal River, you have to go back to Route 1.
Right,
Just for a minute.
yep. Yeah, I
Maine
mean,
Beer doesn't own that land comes right up to, well, there's a little corner there, but it dumps into,
Yeah,
there
there
was
is,
just a little piece on Route 1 there, and then it goes into the parking lot that belongs to Sunrise Cafe and Thai Gardens.
where the food truck court was.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, that's exactly where I walk sometimes.
yeah.
yeah, so I will say that the idea was, you know, with something like this, is that the important part would be for the town to come up with a consistent plan for the whole stretch first, and then potentially bring developers into the conversation of achieving piece by piece part of an adopted plan. Instead of, right now, it sort of just leaves it open on an individual basis, and you can have like vastly different connection points from lot to lot, where you could have one connection at the back and then one connection in the front, and they don't really tie together that cleanly.
Yeah, I'm sort of intrigued by this version of it, because I think it sort of shifts the incentive to the town to actually put something into writing and on paper. I still struggle with the, I think I lean toward having the town do the walkway
Infrastructure,
and
yeah,
have it be, have it be under that umbrella. I think I like the right-of-way idea in principle, but I think it's too soon to put it into an ordinance now, because we don't know where
I
it
think this
goes.
town needs
But
to
I think-
figure it out first,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I think it's not, the analogy might be like what Freeport Conservation Trust might do if they have if they, if you're looking at Google Earth and you say, well, that's a nice little parcel and that's a nice one, I wonder who owns that one? And you go and you talk to the landowners and you say, hey, we'd really like to get a trail that goes through here. It's going to be for foot traffic only. It's going to connect these two parcels. And what do you think? And here's how we're going to make it worth your, whatever it is, and then you negotiate the easements after the fact. Yeah, it's not the perfect way to do it, but I think given the situation, because we can't retroactively force existing properties to make these connections, so I'm not sure that forcing the next 3 that come into the pipeline to make those connections is going to really solve the problem. There's still going to be a problem there that needs to be solved. So I feel like if we put the impetus on the town for the long term and then fix the, solve the problems.
As soon as you have a plan, then
I'm sort of with you, Wayne. It's like, we all know where it's going, and we want to make an allowance for it, and the town is being too slow in making a decision about where this path goes. And we're going to be redoing zoning, that the minute we redo it, it's going to trigger, or it could trigger activity. And that activity could ruin the plan. So why doesn't the town figure this out already?
And my next question is, what do we have to do to create an incentive or to get the town to facilitate this plan that we're talking about?
Yeah.
This all goes to the complete streets and all the stuff that Stantec is doing, but in the conversation that was happening last night, but it's like, where's the path?
But I think
Why
this,
doesn't
in a
somebody
way,
come up with a plan?
this is kind of a.
this
it's
is
like
saying.
It's like part punt and part elegant solution, right? To say, like, the moment there's a plan,
Yeah,
we're-
that's sort of what I was getting at. Like,
Yeah.
part of this work is being done through the VCI project, but that really only goes down to
Main beer.
Main beer. But that takes on the whole C3 area
yep.
and like,
It's already got a sidewalk.
yeah, but if there was something else, like an off-road multi-use path or something like that, that the town wanted, I'm not trying to get into that, but just it would encompass something like that. And then, but yeah, south of that, right, it's sort of at the point where, well, if the town did develop something, there would be a way to react off it.
Glad you're here.
Just a quick update on the Village Corridor Initiative. It's been talked about here. It's relevant to this discussion. Good progress was made last night with Complete Streets and the council on priorities. We're going to have more input, good clarity on that was on the goals for last night. We'll have by early April the next round of this stuff, which will be actually an opportunity for a draft plan to be reviewed by the community and start to provide input. We're also working on a plan through Complete Streets and Public Works to connect from Yarmouth up to downtown. So with that in mind, it probably makes a lot of sense to secure that land within this zoning, to plan for that. So.
When is that plan? I mean, we keep hearing it's going to be on one side of the street, the other side of the street, back from the road, not back from the road.
As of right now, it's going to be on the east side. So it's going to continue up from Yarmouth where it currently hits the Freeport line and then continue up.
Against the road, against the road.
Against the road?
Near the road.
Yeah, that's an opportunity to be on road. I mean, we're looking at essentially cross sections where there's some consideration put into the width of the right-of-way, but also the width of the current travel lanes and available, real estate that is currently devoted to, I think, 14-foot lanes. There's a possibility to go down to, 11 or so, which creates some, an extra 6 or 7 feet, and then to play with how the lanes are divvied up. So there's going to be an opportunity. There's people thinking about that right now. Also, GPCOG is working through a reimagining Route 1. They're looking at cross sections for that area too. So I think from a planning perspective, it makes sense to require that easement as development happens. That way
Is it already in the public right-of-way? I mean, is there no easement required because whatever plan is going to be in the public right-of-way? Or is it going to be on property? And if it's going to be on property, then we need to know.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think we need to dial in a little bit on that, but I think at this point, if you're working through drafts, it doesn't hurt to require that easement right now, and we'll be able to manage that more closely as those cross sections are delineated.
if we know that it's going to be near the street, if I put myself in a developer's shoes, not that I have any experience whatsoever in those shoes, but I would imagine, all right, there's already a front setback, right? There's already a public right-of-way. If you tell me that there's an easement for pedestrian pathway that somebody else is gonna manage, and I have to give you 10 feet of my front setback for an easement, I'm like, that's not a huge deal to me. Like, that seems
It's within
pretty,
the setback, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
that
and
seems pretty reasonable.
You know, some of the options on the table are, 8-foot multi-use path, separated from traffic. So there's different conversations happening.
Yeah.
But that real estate would be
Would it
very
would fit
helpful.
within the public right of way, or it would require an easement onto
Or,
private
but
property?
even if it's like half and half, I mean,
Maybe
even if
both,
it,
you know?
even if it's a 10-foot path and it's, requires
5
5
feet.
feet of the public right-of-way and 5 feet of the buffer, of the front setback,
setback
I think as
anyway.
long as it's in the front setback, that feels like it's not a huge ask.
Yep, and we can dial that in for next month, for the next meeting if you want. But I think that to start to think down that road makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, if it's like in the middle of the parcel, that's a different story. If it's, if it's
you
starting
may-
to change the buildable footprint or the traffic patterns or something, that's a different story. But I feel
The
like,
parcel's only 150 feet deep, you give up another 10 feet.
but if you can't build in it anyway.
If you have a
because it's
15-foot, right now you have
you know,
15-foot
if you have,
setback.
if
there.
you got the setback anyway, and the
So if
town
it's within
says,
that setback, you're giving up some of your setback.
So, but remember, this only applies to things that go to site plan. So your single-family, two-family would not have to meet this.
so that's when your parking, your multi-use path goes like this into
Yeah,
the
I mean,
right of the public
you have
right
to
of way.
plan it so that, I think, it's a efficient path, and then manage around that. I
Can
would,
I ask you one question before you sit down? Yeah. What do you think is the time frame for the town to adopt a pedestrian plan?
Well, I think we're going to have clarity with a draft plan from Stantec as early as April. And there's an opportunity there for funding, and there was a discussion last night that the council could essentially endorse a draft plan by April, which would allow us to then pursue some funding through GP-COG to really get started on implementation. So there'll be a lot of clarity then. The idea is to have a survey.
In C3 though, right?
What's that?
Only in C3, not in C1.
Right, but I think we could continue it down, and is ongoing planning through the reimagining Route 1, where it would make a lot of sense to continue that cross-section, all the way down. So we're going to have a lot more information soon, but in terms of how you approach this, to the extent that you can go ahead and bake in those easements, it's probably a good place to start for now. And we can come back with additional details on that cross-section and dial in on that question with more clarity in terms of where that line is and where the right-of-way is and all those widths. There's still some discussions going on there. And there's also, if we're thinking about infill development here, there's also the consideration of where you might put another Breeze bus stop, right? It's how we organize these things are pretty important, and those decisions are being weighed right now with a number of partners. But we're closing in, and I think, like I said, consensus would be, for now, to sort of reserve that right for the town to then be able to take a leadership role in putting some of that infrastructure in is a good placeholder for now.
Thank you.
Yeah, at the point about only applying to site plan parcels that require site plan review is an interesting one. Because if the path has to wander around single-family homes, that does change the calculation a little bit.
Right, which is why, like, some,
It could all be done in the public right away.
right, then it doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
then it's a straight shot.
Yep.
And that makes a certain type of sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the issue with, like, the current standard, where it's like if it's an undeveloped parcel or, and it's like, let's say it's an undeveloped parcel that's environmentally constrained and that's just never going to get developed. Or it's a long, single-family home that's been there for ages, and it's not going to be redeveloped anytime soon. Those are guaranteed gaps in any network under the current language. That was pretty good in shape for me, though, so I'd turn it over to the board and.
So where does that leave us, though, in terms of, I mean, do we still say, put in some placeholder language that 10 feet of the front setback is reserved in a right-of-way for future pathways to be developed once a plan is in place, and if the plan is in place, then the developer has to,
So right now, I'll say in the C1 at least, there's a standard in the C1 district section that says, for all uses subject to site plan review, in the front setback and a strip extending along the entire frontage of Route 1, except for driveways for a depth of 15 feet, landscaping is required. So right now, you can't build parking or building structures in that front 15 feet anyway. So amending that to say that front setback could be used for, landscaping or sidewalk, along with the driveway or something. I don't think it would be a big burden because it's already kind of undevelopable land for site plan uses under the ordinance.
So are there places where it'd be appropriate to put pedestrian access in one of those, like landscaping type item requirements?
Sure. I mean, it could be. I mean, if the
Wherever we
board
could
was
put that,
interested in that.
I would support it.
Yep. I mean, the right-of-way could be the prioritized area, but if for whatever reason, it wasn't possible, the option would still be there to explore
That's
that.
an interesting one, of like, if for some reason it's impractical or unsafe
Yeah.
to put pedestrian path,
Like
put
you-
a pedestrian path in the public right-of-way. the
Yeah,
town-
you want to use some space for a bus stop and, a bus to pull over or something instead of having the sidewalk in the right, but, I don't know. But I mean, that's sort of what we do downtown in the village, right? We say, you should use your front setback for some amenity. It could be landscaping, it could be outdoor seating, it could be expanded sidewalk, It's just some public benefit, so it would sort of fit along with that.
One thought I have about, that's not really related to text amendments, but I wonder about a map amendment to make these zones align with the growth area and the VCI, which I think, like, right now, there's this kind of funny, like, this one ends and then the study
That's because they
area.
follow lot lines.
What's that?
They follow property lines.
Right. But I,
So you're going to cut a lot?
Well, so our growth areas mostly follow lot lines too, but so the dividing point between the Village Gateway and the Route 1 South growth area is different than the dividing line between the C1 and the C3. So, yeah, I mean, there's potential there to make an adjustment, yeah.
yeah, it
Why
seems
not
to,
bring C3 down
Yeah.
a little further?
basically, bring
basically square
C3
it off
down
with,
to main beer.
Yeah, and then from there below,
Yeah.
it's C1.
There are some, I mean, there'd be some things to think through there. So the C3 has, for instance, an existing standard that says maximum gross floor area per lot of 40,000 square feet. The C1 allows more intense commercial uses than the C3, like main beer being one of them. So you'd have to,
Yeah.
there'd be some things to think through and check on
Pretty
before.
much all that's up there is pretty fully developed anyways. You got the shopping center, you got the gas station, you got Bucks, and that thing, and then you got the park and ride, and then
Well,
you're
the
up.
property across the street, is that C1 or C3 on the corner, across from Irving's?
C3.
C3.
That is C3,
That all belongs to Beans.
the Big Beans property there.
Yep,
That's C3.
yep, down Pine Street. They own down Pine Street.
That-
Yeah, it's like.
So,
yeah,
so
Pine-
Concord Brook is in C1, but the rest of it is in C3, is that right?
I actually have this on the,
No, this is Pine Street right here. Sorry, this is not getting broadcast to the public.
This is Pine Street here, right? And this is Concord Brook. So this is,
No, I think that's the highway.
so Pine Street is like the dividing line between, right?
Yeah.
C3 and C1.
Yep,
So this is the.
Main
urban,
beer is right on the west side there.
the rural.
And it comes down, and then there's this funny little.
Oh, right.
wait,
And
I wish
this
you could
is,
see the roads.
this is Concord Brook right here. So I think, yeah, there is this funny little triangle there. yeah.
So what's that right there, that little,
That's Shaw's, I think, isn't it?
Which one are you talking about?
no. It is Shaw's.
Which one?
Right here.
Yes, Shaw's is the last C1 on the left.
I got it. So that's actually not so bad.
Okay.
So yeah, that floor area limit could have impacts on Shaw's Plaza and Main Beer and like your larger uses where, you know, you probably wouldn't want to make them non-conforming if you ever looked for an expansion on one of those lots and now they wouldn't be able to.
Right. No, we don't want to do non-conforming. I'm just mostly like, it's starting to bother me. Like, why is the order of
Well,
C1,
this brings
C3,
up a whole-
C4? Like, where's C2? I mean, there's just stuff like this. It's like,
Why is there no
why is
C2?
this like
No,
this,
no,
you know?
there was a
C2.
Yeah, no,
It's not there.
I know the reasons for it, but I just feel like as we're doing this, like there are chances to make it a little bit easier to follow.
But I would love to see the growth areas like overlaid on top of this too in some way, the zoning map.
Yep, we could probably do that.
So,
It would be easier to use, and that's one of the things that I think it's just like we're still at a place where it's pretty complicated, and there's just a lot of
Yeah,
stuff that's.
I think that the reason for the existing, I mean, the C3 right now is sort of, right, it's like a gateway zone, heavily landscaped, you know, this more aesthetic stretch coming into downtown off, you know, Desert Road. That's like sort of the stated goal. So I think that's why it's a fairly smaller district.
We should call it G1, Gateway 1.
yeah.
But yeah, I think it's something that we could explore for sure.
So,
Is there general feedback though on the whole amendment? Are things, you know, wildly off base that people want to see differently? Because next steps, you know, kind of depends on this. Are we coming back for, you know, discussion on completely, you know, new and different ideas? Or is it going to be some fine tweaking of this current language and then kind of coming back with, you know, public hearing? Or, you know, what state are we at? I guess that's the sort of feedback I'm looking for.
I mean, my feedback is, I mean, I think it's, you know, I think you've done a good job getting a lot of this squared away. You know, I wonder if we should be raising the height to 45 in the C1.
it is 45, he did.
Well, it is if it's 300 feet back.
Yeah, so right now in the C1, you can only get to 45 feet if your setback, or the way it's worded is, can be adequately screened from US Route 1, 295, Old South Freeport Road, and South Freeport Road as applicable with existing trees. Oh, and the building is setback. It's not an or, so it's and the building.
And the building.
So I don't really know what adequate screening is.
Existing trees.
That's not really defined, so yeah, right now, 45 feet is technically possible to get to in some circumstances in the C1, but it's not the baseline. So that was a change.
I mean, yeah, I think it's a great start. I don't see any of the, like, the stuff that we talked about with the, is it art, I forget the acronym. FAR.
So that,
Yeah.
I feel like, you know, we talked about it, no one really jumped on like, you know, this is the, what was it?
What's the?
When we were talking about like floor area ratio and going to a more
Form-based.
like form-based code, it didn't seem like there was a ton of interest in that versus like a more traditional, and this kind of got to the density that the comp plan and other plans were talking about already. So I kind of went with the more simple approach.
Yep. Seems reasonable.
You know, and then we could always look at things like that in the future, but.
Did you look at potential non-conformance with any of the existing buildings with this, like the max building footprint stuff? 'Cause
I did not. So the max footprint, building footprint only applies to multifamily. So I can't think off the top of my head, maybe someone else in the room looking at Andy and Caroline, because I feel like,
There's no multifamily down there.
but yeah. Since multifamily is pretty hard to develop in the C1, yeah, C3 there is, right.
It's not huge, so.
No, it's not.
Yeah, so I don't think that would create a lot of non-conforming scenarios.
Yep. Okay.
So Carl, I think you did a really good job.
Thank
I
you.
do have a bunch of comments and questions, but they don't attack the
Yep.
core of what you did.
Yep.
I mean, the biggest one that, as Sam pointed out, we're always dealing with this very ancient document. And the more you look at it, the more ancient it looks. And I do not, for the life of me, understand the difference in allowable uses in C1 and C3.
Like why they're
They are
different?
dramatically different, and there's lots of things allowed in C1 that I can't, for the life of me, imagine why they're not allowed in C3.
Yeah, so I think it gets back to what I was talking about the intent of the two. I think the C1 is designed as more of a pure, mixed-use, commercial corridor. You're further away from downtown. It allows larger scale uses, especially commercial, whereas the C3, it allows some commercial, but it's more on like the smaller scale.
It does not allow a restaurant. It does not allow a nursing home. It does not allow an art gallery.
The C3 doesn't allow restaurants?
The restaurants.
No, restaurants are allowed in the
They're
C3.
allowed.
Number 10.
Number 10,
Site plan
11,
review.
carry out even.
So I'd say things like retail and restaurants, offices are what you would be likely to find in the C3, whereas the C1, you might find all of those things, but then some of the things that lean more on the lines of like a light industrial, you might find in the C1 too.
You
Like
could have a multifamily in C3, but you couldn't have a nursing home in C3.
nursing home.
I know it'd be a
Just
pain, but
Compare the lists.
Yeah,
maybe
so
they
I
should
could take a
be
look at.
alphabetical.
Well, I also thought it would be helpful if they were, it would be helpful if they were grouped by residential, commercial, other.
Yeah.
Because you have residential all over the place, and you have,
So if we want to do that, I think we can, because, yeah, I agree. I just didn't do it because, yeah, it's always an ordeal. But yeah, we can. And then, so as we go in and edit zoning districts one by one, as we work through the comp plan, we could do it in each one and do it kind of a piecemeal thing. Or we could do that as a separate project and just do it all at once through the whole ordinance. So,
Notify the entire town.
well, we wouldn't
I
be
guess it's
changing
true.
anything,
Yeah,
so we wouldn't necessarily have to have any
So
notification.
yeah, I mean, in general, I've found the uses could use some work, some updating. They're starting to feel tired. Like, we've got some businesses in town that even just sort of thinking about it, you're like, what use is that? I don't know. There's no easy bucket for them to fit into. Maybe we need some updated buckets, and then the way that they're laid out in the definitions too, I would like to see change so that it's clear what's a definition, like what's a term that's just, you're just gonna find versus what's a use that has another set of,
Right.
and then if that use has performance standards, where are they? Where do you need to go? Are they right there in the definitions? Do you have to go somewhere? Like, there's a lot of cleanup that could be done there. We're not gonna do it tonight, obviously, but, that is a project that I think as we start to tick some of these bigger things off the list would be nice to look at over the next couple of years.
So I can certainly bring back a draft that re-alphabetizes them and then have a separate document that just like 2 columns of the uses where, they're matched, which ones are in the same one, so you can see what uses aren't in the C3 that are in the C1 or vice versa. And then at the next discussion, you could kind of have a conversation if there's anything you want to take from the C1 and add that to the C3 or, add to both or whatever. So, yeah, we
if you
could.
just looked at it, you probably would make good
Yep.
draft decisions.
Is there any, I like the idea of categorizing uses too.
Yeah, I mean, every ordinance does it a little differently. Sometimes you have tables, which are easy to read. Codes doesn't always love tables because it's harder to call out a specific thing with a citation.
C1, A2.
Yeah.
But even if it's like
But yeah, you could group it better
residential
into
uses,
Yeah, commercial uses,
institutional.
institutional, that's like that, other.
Yeah, we could look at that. So alphabetize and then group into subcategories. Yeah.
Can I have one small edit? on this first part of the handout here, which was your, on the back half of your parking prohibited thing here, where you're talking about C1, C3 zoning changes. This is my-
Yeah, give me 1 second.
I'm
There's a
on
record.
page 3 of this other paper here you handed out.
Page 3 of his document?
Yeah, here's a little handout here that, staff report.
Yep.
Page 3, top of the page. When you get the first paragraph, it talks about growth areas, southern stretch of the corridor becoming traditional village center extension. It goes on Route 1 South. Guiding development into compact, well-designed clusters, small neighborhoods take advantage of existing infrastructure, and my favorite canard is to avoid strip-style development. We've been beat up with that down there for 40 years. There is no strip-style development down there, and, you know, we just reduced all the road frontages. You know, so I just wish we could take out that word, avoid those few words.
So I'll say that that was straight out of the comp plan, so,
I don't care. Take it out.
okay, well, we have to,
I mean, it's a negative. It's a negative. It's never happened down there, and it's probably never going to happen down there. And define strip-style development.
Could, or, that was my problem. I didn't know how you define it.
Yeah,
I was trying to figure out what is
What
or
is it?
isn't allowed, and I didn't know what a strip
like
means.
good art or bad art, you know, it's all in the eyes of the beholder, I guess. I mean,
I mean,
Strip style,
isn't-
it's like-
Isn't the area where Good Fire is, and then the building right next to it, the old
Big Indian.
The old Indian? I mean, is
trading
that a
post.
strip
I
development?
think the
It
closest
sorta
thing we have
is.
to
Yeah,
a
yeah.
strip-style development is like the Thai Garden.
The two, there's two
Plaza.
little strips.
Yeah, those two
those
as
two.
well.
And the one on the other side of Main
Yeah.
Beer too.
it's usually like a lack of,
those are two hotels. Those are all hotel buildings that got
I know,
converted.
but they kind of look.
it's usually like a lack of connectivity. So it's, what it's talking about here, before it says, you know, the strip part, it's, you know, talking about small neighborhoods. So it's more of like a clustered approach where, you know, you might have a road in and some connected streets and things all around it versus like every building with parking lot facing and, you know, just like driveway, parking, building,
way to
building,
get-
building.
Yeah.
And like
I just-
nothing is connected and, you know,
just think
it's
it's
not
such
a
a-
neighborhood feel, it's more of like just one long corridor.
That's what it is. But there's never really been, I wouldn't say there's ever been strip-style development there. Where Sunrise Cafe was built in the late 60s, you know, I mean, so,
That is strip style
It
development.
is,
Yes,
it
but-
is sort of an interesting question of like, what is the,
I get what you're saying though, Andy, like, it's not like
yeah,
the
where's the
whole-
boogeyman?
Like, there's a lot of, you know, suburban sprawl communities where it's just, you know, endless.
Oh, yeah, it's not Pleasant Street in Brunswick, you know, that's, I assume Pleasant Street is what was most people think was strip-style development. But, and the other thing in that, at the end of that, the last part of the sentence just says, well, the goal of Route 1 South growth area is to promote a range of housing options, including townhomes, small multifamily buildings, as well as maintain, I think we should add, and promote existing commercial uses.
I agree with that.
so, I mean, if we just, I've tried this thought experiment myself and haven't really come up with much interesting to share, but I guess like, if you imagine yourself walking or driving or whatever down Route 1 South in 15 years, what would you see that would make you think, wow, we really got this right? Or what would you see that you'd think, ooh, that's a bummer that went in there? I wish we could have done that differently. Like what, you know, when we think about the design review, I think the sort of obvious thing that comes to mind for for this downtown area is if we had like a Taco Bell downtown in the traditional style of the Taco Bell, or like a Pizza Hut with the ridiculous mansard roof thing. Like that, we don't want that, right? So what's the sort of equivalent of that for the C1 district? Where is there anything that we would think, wow, that it doesn't fit here? Or is there any version of it that is really desirable? Like if we had 600 units of housing in sort of little neighborhoods, or some big apartment buildings, would that be a problem? I mean, I don't know how to.
Well, it all depends on we only seem to associate strip development with commercial. So if you line up 600 housing units down Route 1, between the highway and Route 1, and it's going to be a strip of houses. It's going to be a housing development strip.
But if
So-
it goes back,
You know, I mean,
if there's collector streets and it makes use of some of the bigger lots that are back there, or if one of the larger,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what the existing ordinance language where it promotes shared access and connectivity, and then, like, yeah, what the comp plan was saying, and, you know, what the draft was trying to do with, like, the max building footprint is, like, not having just endless curb cuts into large apartment buildings that would, yeah, functionally act the same way as, like, a commercial strip style development, but.
So the Yarmouth, where Walgreens is in Yarmouth, and Romeo's, is that allowed or not allowed? And is that what people are trying to avoid? That's only 2 rows of parking, it's got one little
Yeah,
lane in between? But I think that's what people think isn't okay, and I'm trying to figure out why it isn't, and.
or if it isn't. I mean, they've got a nice path that runs right along the front in
Right,
the setback, and you can.
I'll say that
That could happen someday, is that a problem?
that language in the comp plan around the strip, there's no weight to that. There's no performance standard in our ordinance that talks about strip development.
That's why you shouldn't
It's
put a
not
word in
defined.
that you can't define, and you
Well, but to
can't.
be fair, that was in the staff report. It's not in the.
Yeah, it's in the
No, I
staff
think it's
report, and
in
it's,
the
no, it's in the staff report. It's taken from the
Okay.
comp
Comp plan.
plan,
Okay.
neither of which is like a
Policy
a
document.
policy standard that's enforceable, that's, you know, it's more for
Guidance.
context and guidance, and, right, it can mean different things to different people, and so I think that's fine, but,
Yeah.
but yeah, I understand the points that are being made.
what about the end of the next line, where we could add and promote,
Yeah, I mean,
as well as maintain the
nothing about-
existing, as well as maintain and promote the existing uses?
Yeah, I mean, nothing about the draft is designed to take away the chance for any commercial activity. And I think ultimately to achieve what we're talking about in the comp plan, you want commercial activity, right? Like you,
If we're gonna say that we all want a neighborhood down there, I think we just don't want, it wouldn't hurt to add that line.
Well, it's just a staff report too. It's not.
I know, but somewhere in here, you know, when we get around to,
yep. But yeah, I mean, I think there's no point in adding a bunch of housing if those people are then just surrounded by nothing but housing and you haven't achieved any sort of walkable, more
well, you
sustainable.
drive down Route 1 in Falmouth down through there, where they've blasted up on top of the ledge up there, and it's all just housing. There's nothing else down there, storage unit, but
Yeah, and I think that's a
missed
a
opportunity,
general
potentially.
planning mistake that, you know, has
but-
been made over the
but
years.
sometimes that happens.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's open up to, you know, I mean, properties get developed privately, and, you know, what happens, happens. But I think ideally, from the town's perspective, you would want to see a mixture of uses so people can live and work and recreate and do all of those things in the same corridor. And the C1 and C3 would be both, with this change, set up to do all of those things potentially. It would just be a matter of it privately developing that way.
I guess part of my question and my thought experiment is around section 527. Like, what is there anything that's in there that shouldn't be, or anything that isn't in there that maybe should be? There is also a little thing in the overhead door section that drives me crazy.
Yeah, that was,
There's a sentence in there. It just doesn't. It's like not a sentence.
I'll find it.
It's section. It's 527.
Building design?
Building design. Yeah, A1E under the new nomenclature.
Yeah, I didn't understand it, I just.
Yeah,
put it-
and it's I seeing
I
the
didn't
date on
understand the
there.
one D either.
Yes, I'm a little
the
embarrassed seeing the
metal-sided
date on there because I'm
buildings.
pretty sure I was the chair of the planning board on the 18th of June in 2019. But so I maybe could take some blame for that. Yeah, we should fix that sentence because it just doesn't help anyone and it's not well written.
What's that?
What's the intent?
The intent is to.
Are we talking about the overhead doors?
Yeah, we're talking about
Okay,
overhead
yeah.
doors. The intent is to have overhead, not have overhead doors. Partly it's to not have big, like metal walls that are big and unbroken and look just like a huge monolith facing the street.
The fight was they didn't want a VIP down there.
Yeah, so like auto garages, construction services.
That was the
like,
big boogeyman.
You know, other types of uses that might have like service vehicles and you utilize manufacturing, utilize overhead doors. You know, you don't want it to stand out and look like a more industrial area because you have all these other uses allowed,
Yeah.
you know, that's not that industrial feel, so you want to blend it in. Like,
When Casco Bay put up their garage, it was a big fight. They had to put up balloons. I went on the site walk. How big's the building going to be? What color are the doors going to be?
And it got spun a little bit. My recollection of this particular sentence is that it actually came out of, like, I don't know if it ever was built or if it came from a specific applicant or something, but somebody was thinking, what if we want to do like a dining area, like an artisan food and beverage use that has overhead doors that are glass and that could open up in the nice weather to make the inside dining kind of outside? Like, how could we allow that while also trying to put some restrictions on like a yacht-sized door that, you know, because we have yacht dealerships down, so we have some
Right.
yacht-sized overhead
we do.
doors that we also in the same
permitted
zone.
use.
That's, I don't know. There's just some stuff in that. I think that section 527 might require a little bit longer look.
yeah, so I made some initial changes,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, there could definitely be other things if the board has recommendations. Happy to take stabs at language or, you know, whatever.
I didn't understand what D was trying to do either.
The metal building,
Yeah.
yep. Yeah, I don't love the way that one's worded either.
Metal siding in a single direction is not permitted, so what does that mean?
It's only if it's not, it's basically, it's similar to what we have in the draft, the current draft of the design review, where you can't have an unbroken building facade of more than a certain dimension with.
But what does that have to do with metal or the direction of the metal?
It's like a specific call out against corrugated metal siding, basically. Just saying, we don't want that one specific thing done in that one specific way.
So it's also like 12 feet tall, so like, I think there's some instances in the C1 on buildings where there's like a dividing point where it turns from metal to a different material.
Or
and,
where
like,
your
that's
metal
okay.
rotates 90 degrees and all of a sudden you.
It's all, like, at
Standard, yeah.
the end there, it gets at the blank and unadorned walls, like, it's changing. up
Say
the
that
configuration.
then.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fine, I mean, we can get
And I
rid of
don't know
it
that
for all I
metal
care,
is
and have metal
always-
buildings up the whole corridor.
Mitch, if you look at the hardware store,
Yeah.
they made them put brick columns up, stone columns up every now and then to break up the long facade,
Yeah.
because that was going to be Rollins Furniture is what it was originally. So they didn't want all, oh my God, like metal siding, so they made them put up these
It's a
decorative
little
columns.
bit of a, you know, when you try to do design review light, you end up with these kinds of things that are, it's not really a holistic look at it. I don't know if we want to take a holistic look at it or just like, I don't know if I have the answer, but reading through this again.
Unbroken long facades, I get it. That's a very easy thing to describe, but metal could be beautiful, maybe. I'm not sure it
Yeah.
could be, but I don't know that it couldn't be. And-
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's as simple as saying blank or unadorned walls
Right.
are not allowed over
And
certain
metal's an
dimensions.
acceptable material as long as it's not a
Blank.
and
Right.
unadorned
Yeah,
wall.
as long as you don't have an unadorned wall section greater than whatever it is, 12 feet tall and 50 feet
Yeah.
long.
And that would-
Yeah, I mean, if there's general consensus to get rid of that standard, I can,
I had another one in 427, which was where you say that commercial buildings have to be articulated as two-story buildings, even if they're 45 feet high. And I understood why you might want to do that in a thing like Maine beer.
sorry, where were you? I missed the
Let me see
beginning.
if I can find it.
Page.
Hold on. I'll find it.
I think it's on page 10.
It's on page 10.
Yep.
It's A1A.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And at the bottom there, it says, in addition, commercial buildings with wall heights greater than 20 feet shall be treated as a two-story building in terms of window and trim treatment, regardless of
Yeah.
the number of floors. What if it's an office building? What if it's a three-story office building or a four-story office building? Why would you do that?
Oh, I see what you're saying. I
don't
think
think
it's
it
assuming
would-
that like, I mean,
It's
if,
a commercial, a big
I think
commercial.
it's talking about like a big warehouse building. I
right.
don't think it, yeah, I see what you're
Well,
saying.
but it says commercial buildings.
Commercial building.
If it said retail buildings, I might understand it better.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a weirdly written standard.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess it was assuming like you would have like maybe 20 to 25 feet. Like if someone was doing a one-floor building, they wouldn't make it 35 feet tall, and therefore you wouldn't need 3 fake floors of worth of windows. But, you know, maybe someone in a more industrial space might do like a 20 to 25 foot building, and therefore you would only need the 2 stories of windows is the only thing I can like really think of. But we can, so are you interested in like rewording it or just getting rid of that entirely? And
I mean, I think the sort of the.
just sticking with the, like, you can't have a blank wall for more, you know, and if you want to add a window, that's fine. If you want to add some other architectural feature, that's fine too.
I mean, and when it says shall be treated as a two-story building, does that mean as opposed to a one-story building?
Yeah, it's saying if you have like a one-story building that's,
It's
you know,
that
25
tall.
feet tall, you need to put like 2 floors worth of windows, even though you don't have that second floor.
Can you do
can't-
something else besides windows? Can you just put a
yeah.
break in there or something? I
Well,
mean,
that's what I'm saying. Should it just be, you know, deleted and require an architectural feature, but not necessarily a
I
window?
might not want
I
windows.
mean, I think the broad goal of this is valid. To encourage high-quality buildings, architectural detail on the front and side edges of pitched and flat roofs are required. I actually sort of like that one.
Yep.
You know, that's kind of, we talked about something in that rough framework for the design review district too. It's like,
It's specific
yeah.
enough.
So I'm okay with some of the, but I think we could, and again, we changed some of this stuff in the last, yeah, I remember going through some of this stuff years ago, but I don't know, it could probably use another.
I mean,
fine
maybe if
tooth
it just
comb.
said shall be treated as at least a two-story building, it'd be all right.
Yeah, that's,
That may solve the
point.
problem
Yep.
that I was seeing. Although Maine Beer
Multi-story.
looks like a one-story building or a, I mean, I guess it depends which,
Which angle?
yeah, where you're looking, but
right.
Maybe if you took out the "and" between window trim and trim treatment, maybe put an "or" in there, in terms of windows or trim treatment, regardless of the
that
number of
would help
floors.
too.
Yep.
One or the other.
And/or.
Remember, it couldn't be a 45-foot building, so,
Right. If you change the 2 to multi, or does,
Is
because I don't
a-
think multi has the same meaning for stories as it does for units, right?
right, I think as a multi-story building,
Could be a
maybe
two-story
that would
building.
solve the problem, that problem. And I think the "or" is correct, that Andrew was pointing out as well.
Okay, so wall heights greater than 20 feet shall be treated as a multi-story building in terms of window or
Or
trim
trim
treatment.
treatment.
Or,
And, you know,
Gives them an option of what they're going to do.
Right, right.
for E, the one, the overhead door one, sorry, I'm coming back to that one. I think, the overhead doors should be designed to not unreasonably stand out. It's just,
But what's that mean?
what does that mean? I don't know.
Of course, Mass Landing put overhead doors down there so they could roll them up and walk out on the
Maybe
deck.
that's what it was.
Oh, yeah, that's what it was about.
That's what it was about.
They wanted to do it down there
Yes.
up behind Sunrise
Exactly
Cafe.
what it was about.
They wanted to do it up behind Sunrise Cafe, and they demanded, the town demanded a sidewalk, and the applicant said, you know, the owner said, no deal.
Okay, so at least
That
we.
doesn't look bad.
Right, exactly. So we allowed them to do it by making that change. But I think looking back, the change could be better. I think the part that says, if the overhead door is a prominent feature of the building, design must include architectural features such as trim or type of glass, I don't know what that means, but it must include architectural features. You just leave it at that. But yeah,
All right, since
I
we're,
don't want to spend too much time on
Yeah, like
this.
something like overhead doors, like, you know, that are prominent features are visible, like from on a front
Yeah,
facade.
I think
you
the
know,
idea is basically that
Well-
you don't have one of those garage doors that's just like a like a
Right.
flat panel that's, 20 feet long and 20 feet high, that's just looks like basically a monolith when it's down. That was the intent, to avoid that, so.
picking nits here, can we look at number 2, right there underneath E, where it says blank or unadorned walls are not
Are allowed.
are allowed if the walls are not directly visible from any public road or buildings on abutting properties. That's the part that got me, because you're saying the side, you got two big buildings next to each other, Shaw's, and Shaw's 2 right next door. And Shaw's has a blank wall on the side of it, and the building next to it might or might not have a blank wall on the
And
side of it.
295 is a public road.
No, from 295, I understand. Yeah, I mean, right, first of all, from 295, it just seemed like, I get it from the main road, but I don't get it from the side.
It's
Like,
also a little bit of a problematic standard like if you're hoping for infill development, it's basically like whoever gets there first gets the big dumb wall, and then you get the like then what happens when you get 5 years later?
Well,
Now you
it
have an
says
abutting
even if
property
your
who has
wall-
to have a wall that is not,
Well, it says even if you have a blank wall next to you, you couldn't have a blank wall.
That's what I'm saying. So if I get there first, I can build a big flat wall that faces your property, but now that when you come after me, you can't build the same big flat wall that
Because
faces
there's no
my property.
building on the abutting property,
Yeah,
right,
because
right.
now
But
I'm in
you
a
can't-
butter.
And you've got a
you
big
can't
flat
build it,
wall,
so
and
you gotta make a nice wall, even though I can't even look at it because it's a big blank wall. It doesn't have any way
See
to
the
look at your
problem?
building.
Oh, I saw it. I actually had this down as something to potentially get rid of and just say, not directly visible from any public road.
That's-
But I ended up deleting it and not.
That's right, from any public road,
Which, I mean, that carries forward with how we treat design review.
I'm
So
not really
there's-
sure that 295 should be included.
No,
in
no,
that either.
it was more of a like, because it says
Well, it
including but not
specifically
limited to.
says 295.
Oh, it does. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't even
Specifically
notice
calls
that.
out 295, and you're riding on a freeway. I mean,
Yeah, I'm not sure I have ever noticed what Shaw's looks like from the freeway. And then
I never
thousands.
looked, and I never
advertises-
would
It says
care.
Shaw's.
Right, it's,
It says Shaw's.
well, you see the back of Bucks from the freeway.
See the back of
That's
Napa.
blank.
I got a sign out
They have
there.
a pitched roof, it's not a blank.
Anyway,
Well,
And they
all
have
right.
windows, and they
all
have
right.
windows and stuff.
So, but I think broadly speaking, the goal is still a good one. And it just, maybe those are some good sort of first stab at some tweaks. Okay.
Can I bring up one other point that I wanted to ask people's opinions about, which has to do with front setbacks? So, I'm not sure I know where I'm even headed here, but it seems to me urban spaces are defined by street walls. And I don't know that maybe we don't care in C1 and C3 about that. C1 has a 15-foot setback on both sides, and in some cases, that 15-foot has been held, and in other cases, it's not held. But it's held often enough that you kind of feel that 15 feet. In C3, you feel nothing. And I don't know, and there's supposedly this bigger setback for landscaping, but then you have parking, and so there is maybe the landscaping will create that promenade. It's one of the reasons why I kind of like the A plan in last night, even though I know the council didn't, and I defer, but it creates something unifying.
Yeah, so I
I
tried.
think we want something unifying there.
So I think especially, right, the C3 is supposed to be more of that transitional area to the downtown. It's not purely downtown, but, at least as of right now, with some of the work we're doing through the VCI, right, there's more likelihood that, alternative transportation infrastructure gets put in C3 than, the C1 all the way south. So, right, the existing setbacks are larger there than the C1, even though they're closer to downtown, to encourage this landscape area. But right, if we're trying to, so I reduced it a little, but still kind of kept along the same thinking of like the ordinance's current intent. But yeah, I think it's perfectly acceptable for the board to consider reducing the setbacks more in the C3 to have a lesser setback requirement there than the C1.
It seemed counterintuitive
Yeah.
that it was bigger there.
Yeah.
And I got the idea about the landscape, but 15 feet is enough for landscape on both sides already. So why do you
I
need
mean,
25 feet? And then you're going to
5
have,
feet of landscaping. And,
is enough. So
which is
I
what we
I
had
was
downtown.
trying to think about who wrote this 30 years ago and what were they, trying to be respectful to what they were trying to accomplish. And I don't know what they were trying to accomplish.
Yeah, so I mean, on the sides, you look at what's existing now in the C3, you need this combined 75-foot setback on your sides. So it doesn't specify, it says it needs to be at least 25, but you need 75 feet total of side setback. That's that's a massive
And why?
setback, right? And I think it's based on this intent, that it was larger lots, low density, and that you were going to have lots of nice aesthetic, landscaped, more open areas. The impervious coverage was less, the density was less, and then you would get to the village and, then you would have your denser core. But now, there's transit stops there, and we're looking at expanding density and all of these things. So, yeah, I think it makes total sense to consider reducing to 10-foot front setback, 15-foot front setback at least, whatever the number is. So yeah, if people want to see that.
Bear in mind that conversation we had earlier about that
Yep.
use path. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we might want to make sure there's enough space for that easement.
Yeah,
But I don't know why you
generally
need
in favor-
25.
I'm generally in favor of that, too. I mean, I don't think,
And the side setback, the same thing. It's like 15-foot
See-
side setbacks. Why do you need more than that? That's 30 feet between buildings?
You don't have to convince me to reduce setbacks, so.
Okay.
the C3 is never gonna, I mean, with Bean and the corporate headquarters there, and like all the parking, it's never gonna have a true streetscape that continues all the way, at least on the east side of the street.
Yeah, I mean,
but-
Varney is also set way back.
Yeah,
and
although,
it's
I mean, you could imagine some of
Building in
that-
front of that.
Yeah,
like they did in Falmouth.
yeah, I mean, there's enough space with some creative dirt work in there to put closer.
Well, in fact, when Beans built that corporate headquarters, they took out buildings that were close to the street, where that old restaurant was.
Ooh, I don't go back that far, I don't think.
No, the restaurant, it wasn't that long ago. There was a big restaurant there the restaurant that had all the beer, it was a fish place, and then it became a beer place.
Next to the pet.
And, yeah, and
Next to
then
Pet
they tore it
Pantry.
down. And it was right there at the street.
It was the
And
Get
what
In
if they
Here
want to put
restaurant.
one back?
One time it was the Get In Here restaurant.
Yeah. I kind of liked the beer thing for a while.
direct.
Didn't last long, but it was kind of fun.
Yeah,
Just for context, the
Gets you. that was the last place.
VC3 setback, which we're not talking about here, but, we'll probably come back to when we revisit the village districts, because that's, you have C3, then you hit the industrial area parcel where,
Yep.
the Bean headquarters is, and then, you have VC3, and then you go into the downtown. VC3 is right now 25-foot setback, 15-foot side, 25-foot rear. So that's probably something eventually we would want to reduce too, but just for
Can I see
context.
VC3, somebody got a map?
Yeah, I'll pull it back up on the,
fit this little triangle right here,
right, so.
across from Bean, like where the.
Yeah, it's sort of the west side of, west
that little
from
business
the
loop
headquarters.
in there.
AEC, where that is?
No, just north of that. AEC is like here.
AEC is in the industrial one, so it's like that
really?
one
Oh, it's that
I-1
one.
gray parcel
That's
there
where,
on the west.
there's a salon and, yeah.
Yeah.
Sell the Christmas trees there in
Yeah,
the strip.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The Christmas tree.
There's a couple houses up back. There's 3 or 4 houses on that street.
But right, so this C3, VC3 stretch, you have 25-plus foot setback requirements right now, and then it feeds into the VC1, where you potentially have like a 5-foot setback. So it's a pretty drastic difference. If that's supposed to be a transition area, I think it makes sense to, reduce it
setback of
10,
5.
15, yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Split the difference. Yeah, I mean, I almost thinking about the street wall type of thing. I almost wondered about the 2 rows of parking
Yeah, I didn't
It's
like the
like-
2 rows
is
of
it-
parking. I
is it
maybe,
one row of
I
parking?
wondered, what if you
In
didn't allow parking in the
C3,
front?
C1, or both?
I mean, you got existing uses here, too,
Right.
that kind of
Yeah.
ruins it all, so.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's always going to be
Yeah,
the case.
but I mean, you could say, like, if we changed it down to 1 row of parking in a travel aisle, so that kind of theoretically brings the building
A little closer,
20 feet closer, right? Because you,
20
parking
feet,
spots 20.
at least 20
Are you
feet.
thinking C3 or both?
Oh, I'm just, yeah, I don't even know at this point. But, I mean, I would prioritize C3, but potentially in both.
Because I think the C1 has a lot of developed condition where you see like the 2
Yeah,
rows of
right.
parking.
Yeah.
So, and at least currently, that's not envisioned as quite the transition area that C3
Yeah, so
is.
maybe it's just in C.
But yeah, you're gonna.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to create tons of non-conformance, but there's a way to do it in a way that's not, you could do it in a way that doesn't put a burden on existing properties that are non-conforming, right? You could write some language that it's perfectly, I don't know.
Oh, well, that's the question. I mean, obviously, anything that's existing would be grandfathered.
Yeah, but then if
But
someone
could-
tries
Trying to
to,
do
Yeah,
something
could-
different in the
could-
future.
You don't want to make it non-conforming.
What?
You don't want to make it grandfathered non-conforming.
You don't
Right.
want to?
We want
Wouldn't
to
wanna.
generally avoid creating non-conformance if
Yeah.
possible. But
yeah, I mean, it makes it
Shaw's clearly
difficult
has more than 2 rows of parking
to
in front.
expand.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It becomes an issue if someone's trying to expand something.
Right.
And then it becomes a conversation of, okay, well, you can't expand a non-conforming use. So, you know.
If they wanted to
you
put a
have
building on the front of their lot,
Yeah.
Which is
Or on the
exactly the
side.
type of thing that we might want.
we might want that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's, yeah. I
The
mean,
idea,
Shaw's
the idea with the
almost-
parking in front was to make it look like it's open. You know, you drive by all these places and all you see is the back of the building. Like when they proposed the medical spot down there across on the 9-lot development there across from the bookstore. There was a medical place gonna go in there. And they wanted all the cars to park out back when you went to project review, and it's like, well, you drive by and you can't tell, you know, they wanted the door in the back and put a dormer on the
That's the
front, and go
problem.
through this whole thing of,
Yeah.
Door goes in the back if you put the parking in the back.
that's right, and it doesn't look like it's open. Here, you're driving 50 miles an hour, and you know,
Big.
is it busy? Is it open?
Right. It's like the insurance building in Yarmouth that we always talk about, right?
Yeah, oh, that's a train wreck.
That's why we always talk about it.
He wanted to face that facing the river, and the town gave him a hard time.
Right.
Which, the big brick building?
The building across
Patriot,
from like.
Patriot Insurance.
Yeah.
The new building.
Yeah.
Down from him, I mean, it's not, the building itself doesn't look, but when you drive by, you don't even notice it because there's never anything happening
Yeah.
there, right? It's just this big, so I think that's where like the street wall thing becomes too, when it's not a walkable, strictly walkable area, you run the risk of just having you feel like you're driving through a tunnel.
That's why, yeah, I think, at least right now, where the town is in infrastructure planning, I think it makes a lot of sense in the C3, but maybe not currently in the C1.
Does anyone else have a strong feeling about like a 1 row of parking in the C3 being appropriate?
I just wanted to look like it's open in the front.
Yeah, well,
front
I mean,
door.
if anything, that helps, right? Because
Of
you
course,
get your
of
1
course.
row fills up
You
faster.
still have the 1 row, you still.
Yeah, and that's where the visitors come, maybe the workers go in the back or whatever, or if you have additional parking in the back, the front's full. It'd just be nice to, as you're driving by, to see like it's open for business.
People are parked there.
And to most folks, that means there's people parked there and the door's open in the front.
Yeah, and I can't think of any, I mean, like, the credit union, Chilton, the bank across the street, like, they all have most of their parking on the side. So,
Yeah, when I was looking at that originally, most of it kind of fit in that pattern.
yeah, Pet
anyway.
Pantry even,
Pendry.
it's on the side. I mean, those places are, Gritty's, well, who knows what's gonna happen to that building, but anyway. Okay.
But the hotels in C1 have 2 rows of parking.
Yeah.
There's a lot of 2 rows of parking.
Yeah, there's a lot of 2 rows.
That's a great point. We probably wanna leave that alone.
But you know, like you take the bank and some of those places, it's all, the front door and the parking's visible from the street.
Right.
So when you drive by, you see that there are cars parked there, that it is open. You know, it's not like it's, all you see is the blank wall, and then you gotta go around back to see what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, if you wanna sort of encourage his business if people are there.
Yep. All right, have we beaten this one enough for one night?
Oh, I got a couple little. This issue about duplex and single-family attached, I've never used the word duplex before, and
So-
I always wonder why it isn't single-family attached, and what about a threeplex? And does that automatically become multifamily?
So right now, multifamily is 3 or more units in one structure. So,
So if you had three
like a
townhomes,
townhome
it's
with-
multifamily?
yeah.
And so
So
duplex is a
single-family and
unique thing?
duplex are usually separated because they're generally just building permits, not site plan, whereas multifamily has traditionally been, 3 or more, and then you go to like a planning board or PRB or something. But that will change with the state law, where we're going to have to make triplex and quadplex their own unique uses, and those will probably go into the permitted section with single-family and duplex, and then multifamily will transition to 5 or more.
Okay, that
So-
actually is better, but then you really have replaced the word duplex to single-family attached, right? I mean,
We would probably, we would have,
or just say 2-unit, 3-unit, 4-unit?
you could.
That's fine.
Well, whatever. Duplex, triplex, and quadplex essentially should just mean 2-unit, 3-unit, 4-unit. And, so either way. But yeah, I've been in different places where single-family attached is, sometimes it's its own use, sometimes it's the same as multifamily, different, so yeah. Everyone can be a little different on that one.
Does a boatyard mean boat sales?
Let me pull up the definition of boatyard. A business or gainful occupation for the retail sale of boats
Okay,
and or where
yeah,
boats are
right.
hauled, stored, repaired, and or constructed.
And, well, if you go through the uses, you might just bring it up next time.
Yeah.
that- Like, I didn't understand what artisan food and beverage is as opposed to.
Artisan food is different from a restaurant where it's like a small craft brewery or, like a bakery, like something where there's some sort of like manufacturing component alongside the like tasting room or eating
I
of
guess
it.
that's in the definition that
Yep,
explains
it's
it.
defined, yeah.
All right. I think that's it.
There's, yeah. The uses, again, there's some.
I'll take a look
odd-
at it, yeah,
There's
yeah.
some odd stuff in there.
There's
Like the whole local, I guess it kind of makes sense in the context of Freeport as a place where we have these big national retailers in a small town, but there's like a special carve out for like local retail use is like its own,
Where were you looking?
this is in the definitions.
Oh, because I don't remember seeing that in any of our districts that I've looked at lately, but it could be left over from something,
Oh, that's true. I didn't even cross, I just,
local retail trade.
local retail trade. I didn't even cross, I just read it and thought, well, that's weird.
Local retail trade is mentioned 2 times, wait, no, 6 times. That is an allowed use in the VMU1
And you,
and the VMU2,
Which,
and that's it.
pop quiz, who knows where the VMU one is?
They're east of BC1, so. Yeah, so my guess is that the idea, I haven't looked at those specifically, but maybe they don't allow, your regular retail uses because they don't want to allow these larger scale national retailers, but some mom and pop shop on the corner is
That's
okay there.
interesting. I actually didn't know, okay, so the VMU, I had glossed over that in my head. I thought that was all V1 down there on South Street. Yeah, interesting, okay. Yeah, I think there's a couple of uses that we could consider reworking. But this is not a hot burning fire. I mean, it's just,
And just one final comment on 527.
Yep.
You could, when you give it your next read, the whole conversation we had about the design ordinance, there's some things in here that, again, it's very hard to define. So for instance, in D1, that new addition that you wrote,
Yep.
and at the very end, it says spacing to visually break up large wall planes and integrate buildings into the surrounding street, site and streetscape. So I don't know how you determine whether it's integrated or not. And down below in E1, E2, the flagpole should be in proportion to the height of the building. 30%, 90%, 150%? What's proportion to the building?
I
It
saw that.
doesn't look like the Yankee Ford flag. That's
Well, okay, but they define that.
I know.
But I get what it, I'm
That's what
all in
it's-
favor of everything that this is trying to accomplish. I just don't like unclear language that leads
Yeah, I
to
mean,
an argument.
well, so with that one, I didn't touch the flagpole thing, and since I've been here, it hasn't come up at all. So if the board has specific guidance
Giving a
on what they
rewrite to it,
want.
let's fix
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
let's
yeah.
go.
I think we should rewrite it that the flag has to be out of proportion to the Yankee Ford.
That's right.
I mean, I work at Lower Falls Landing, we got a big flag there too, so, you know.
I'm just. Yeah.
I always
Is it
tell
the Yankee
people,
Ford?
park
I
by the
can't even
flagpole.
remember. Is it that
It
one?
is
There's-
that one.
Is it that one
Yes.
that's the one that's?
Yes, yes.
What, the
The Yankee
That's really
Ford.
big.
It's huge.
Yankee?
Yankee
At
Ford.
Yankee Ford.
Oh, where's that?
It's the
Right
one.
by exit 17.
Yeah, Muddy
Oh, no.
Rudder.
You mean-
Before.
Casco Bay.
Casco Bay? Oh,
No,
maybe
I thought it was
is.
Yankee. Anyway, sorry.
it
There's
used to
some
be
Ford
Yankee.
dealership that
No,
has like.
no, Yankee Ford was in Brunswick.
Casco Bay.
Well, Yankee Ford was out to South Portland, and Tucker bought the one in Brunswick that was Yankee Ford,
Right,
called
there
it
was
Tucker
one
Ford.
in Brunswick.
They were the ones that had the huge flag, right?
Well, there's a big one at, there's a big one at Casco Bay, there's a big
It
one at,
is.
there's a
That
big one
is
at my
huge.
office at
what?
Lower Falls Line.
What harms it do?
But like a metric in there?
Yeah.
Is that the, yeah, okay.
Yep,
All right.
I'll look at
Just look
something.
for unclear language.
Yeah.
Anything else on this? I mean to send us down a flag rabbit hole. My apologies.
I'm sorry, I just,
Oh, that's fine.
All right, last chance on item number 4.
So just real quick, wrapping that one up, like next steps, do we want to come back for a discussion before public hearing? I think there's probably enough that we've talked about that we still want feedback on. Did Warren,
I
know,
think
maybe
we
not-
should probably approve the language.
yeah, just get like
Yeah.
a general consensus on
So that we're
language.
not wasting everybody's time
I mean, I will say,
modifying it
I
on the
did,
fly.
we notified the whole C1, C3 district for
This
this
meeting.
discussion, yeah. So, and I
We have
didn't
a
hear,
word.
I didn't hear much leading up to the meeting.
Is it worth inviting like FEDC or some? I mean, I know we have you, Brett, and you're in contact with them. We have a couple, right, Mary was here
Yep.
for a while. And Becky.
Ken is FEDC too.
Oh, Ken's FEDC
Yeah.
too, okay, not count, okay, so you've got multiple hats, okay. Right, okay. So, you guys are representing FEDC? Or, yeah, you can report back to FEDC. Do you guys have any comments while you're here? I mean, we're, you know. Digest.
We didn't
yeah.
talk about the pay, we can table it for now, but we didn't finish the conversation about the multi-use path and who pays. So just hold that thought.
It's gonna be
Yeah.
an ongoing one.
I'll
And
do
we talked
some
about
more-
the space standard,
Yep,
but
yep.
we didn't talk about, well,
who?
is there a bucket of money put aside, or is the town gonna foot it?
Yeah,
Or both.
Or both, yeah.
I'll talk amongst staff.
You
on
might
that
want to
one,
talk to the
you know,
rest of
yeah,
the staff
yeah.
about what, yeah.
Some stakeholders and.
But this
come
would be
back
the
with something.
chance to do it if we're gonna do it. And we're doing a lot of gifts to that group, so.
I definitely have a growing opinion on that we can talk about next time too.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure how I feel, I just know
Yeah,
that
that's
it's a
been-
thing to think about.
Yep. To be continued. All right, item number 5. Anyone wish to address the board, either in person or on Zoom, on non-agenda items? Great.
No one's on Zoom.
Do I hear? Yeah, Tom has like 8 icons up there.
Yeah.
Motion to close the meeting.
And a second from Bonnie. All in favor? All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
you.